Jack, when you hear Maria Farmer talk about her case now, and you hear what she just told us, how significant do you think her story is?
I think her story is significant. I think anything and everything that directly challenges Donald Trump's account of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein is a matter of significance.
Everybody needs to sit down for this one, because what just came out, what is actively exploding right now as we speak, is the kind of revelation that could shake the entire foundation of this presidency to its core. And I'm not being dramatic for effect. I'm not exaggerating to get views. I'm telling you straight that a specific email from Jeffrey Epstein's personal files has been identified, spotlighted, and is now being called by members of Congress, by legal analysts, by people who have spent years combing through these documents, the smoking gun, the one email that Donald Trump has been terrified of since the day those Epstein files started getting released into the public domain.
For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress. So, Ms. Bondi, will you commit right here to immediately providing those two documents in unredacted form to members of Congress? Not a complicated question.
And look, I know what you're thinking. We've heard a lot of talk about Epstein over the years. There have been a million theories, a million accusations, a million rabbit holes that lead nowhere. But this is different. This is not an anonymous source with an agenda. This is not a rumor from some tabloid. This is an email written by Jeffrey Epstein himself, in his own words, talking about Donald Trump. And what it says is that Trump knew about the girls.
Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
That is not an interpretation. That is not spin. That is what the email actually says, and it directly contradicts everything Trump has ever claimed about his relationship with Epstein. For years, Trump has told the same story. He said he knew Epstein casually. He said they weren't that close. He said that at some point he noticed Epstein was behaving inappropriately and he cut him off, banned him from Mar-a-Lago, and never spoke to him again. That's been the official line. That's what the White House has repeated over and over and over. But now we have Epstein's own words saying, no, Trump knew. Trump knew what was going on.
It's the moment Jeffrey Epstein is asked about his friendship with Donald Trump, and it's going viral today.
Have you socialized with him?
Yes, sir.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
The year was 2010, and the financier was battling an onslaught of lawsuits from multiple women, accusing him of sexually abusing them as minors. Epstein and Trump were known to be good friends.
And on top of that, there's another email where Epstein brags about knowing how dirty Donald is. Those are his exact words. He's saying he had information on the president. He's saying he had leverage. He's implying that he could have used what he knew against Trump if he ever needed to. Come on. Are you kidding me right now? Now, I want to be extremely clear about something before we go any further, because this is where the nuance matters. This email does not prove that Trump committed a crime. I'm not saying that. Nobody credible is saying that, at least not yet.
This was not a mistake. This was not by accident. This was not because you only had 30 days when you really used 75, and that doesn't even include all the hours last March that you were redacting it. But I'll tell you why it's clear it wasn't a mistake. There is an email entitled Epstein Victim List. There are 32 names.
What this email does is blow a massive hole in Trump's story. It destroys his version of events completely, because you cannot have Epstein writing in private communications that Trump knew about the girls while Trump is standing in front of cameras saying he had no idea what Epstein was up to. Those two things cannot both be true. And when one of them is coming from the guy who actually ran the trafficking operation, the guy who had no reason to lie in a private email he never expected the public to see. Well, you tell me which version sounds more believable. This email came out of a massive document dump.
Also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted. And it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege, there is no attorney-client privilege, and I see you're checking with your staff, and I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell.
We're talking about roughly 20,000 pages of Epstein-related records and emails that the House Oversight Committee released back in November 2025. Thousands and thousands of messages from Epstein's estate. And when media outlets went through them, when journalists actually sat down and started reading through these emails page by page, they found that Trump's name shows up constantly.
Desk a year ago. I did, however, find a couple of important documents. An 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York and a draft indictment from Florida against Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress.
We're talking about more than half of the 2,300 email exchanges that one major outlet reviewed. More than half. Trump is all over these files. And the White House's response has been, and this is almost funny if it weren't so serious, Trump called it a Democrat hoax. He said if there was really a smoking gun, then Democrats would have used it already because they controlled the files for 4 years. He said they had nothing. That's his defense. That's what he's going with. And meanwhile, the actual email is sitting right there in the public record saying the exact opposite of what he claims. So let's walk through the full picture here because there's a lot of context that matters. In November of 2025, the House Oversight Committee, which had been investigating Epstein connections for months, released a massive cache of records, 20,000 to 23,000 pages of emails, financial records, correspondence, and internal documents from the Epstein estate. This was not a small leak. This was a full-scale document dump that gave the public more access to Epstein's private communications than we have ever had before. And almost immediately, journalists started finding Trump's name everywhere. Not in a few scattered references, not in some footnote buried on page 15,000. Trump was mentioned in more than half of the email exchanges that major outlets reviewed. Half. That alone should tell you something about how deeply connected these two men were, regardless of what Trump says about having cut Epstein off. Now let's talk about the specific emails that are blowing up right now. The first one, the one being called the smoking gun, is an email where Epstein writes that Trump knew about the girls. That's it. That's the statement, plain and simple. Epstein is saying in his own private communication that the man who is now the president of the United States was aware that underage girls were being exploited. And remember, this is not some political opponent making an accusation. This is not a rival trying to score points. This is Jeffrey Epstein himself writing in what he believed was a private email. He had no reason to exaggerate. He had no political motive. He was simply stating what he believed to be true in a private conversation. And what he believed to be true was that Trump knew. The second email that's getting a lot of attention is one where Epstein writes something along the lines of, "I know how dirty Donald is." And that one is significant for a different reason because it's not just about what Trump knew. It's about what Epstein thought he could do with that knowledge. When someone says, "I know how dirty you are," that's leverage. That's a threat. That's someone saying, "I have information that could destroy you, and I'm aware of that fact." And the implication, the thing that nobody in the White House wants to talk about, is that Epstein may have been holding this over Trump's head. He may have been using this knowledge as a form of protection or influence. And if that's true, if the president of the United States was in a position where a convicted sex trafficker had blackmail material on him, that is not just a scandal. That is a national security crisis. That is a situation where the leader of the free world could potentially be compromised by someone involved in one of the worst criminal enterprises in modern history. The political reaction has been intense. Democrats have jumped all over this. Representative Jaime Racine, who has been one of the loudest voices pushing for full transparency on the Epstein files, went on camera this week and laid it all out. He talked about how these documents raise serious questions about Trump's knowledge of Epstein's conduct. He talked about how the White House has been fighting over redactions and trying to control which parts of the files get released. And he basically said what a lot of people are thinking. If Trump has nothing to hide, then why is the White House fighting so hard to keep certain things under wraps? Why are they pushing back on full transparency if the president is completely innocent? That's a fair question. That's a really fair question. And the White House has not given a good answer. On the Republican side, the response has been almost entirely focused on attacking the people who released the emails rather than addressing what the emails actually say. Trump allies are saying that Democrats selectively leaked certain emails to fabricate a false narrative. They're saying this is a political hit job. They're saying the timing is suspicious. And look, is it possible that Democrats are being strategic about which emails they highlight? Sure, of course they are. That's politics. But the emails are real. The words are Epstein. Nobody is disputing that these are authentic documents. So, you can complain about the timing all you want, but that doesn't change what the emails say. You can call it a political hit job. But Epstein still wrote that Trump knew about the girls. Attacking the messenger doesn't make the message go away. And here's what really gets me about the Republican response. These are the same people who for years have been screaming about protecting children. These are the same politicians who have built entire campaigns around fighting trafficking and saving kids from predators. That has been a cornerstone of conservative media and Republican politics for the last several years. And now that there's actual documentary evidence linking their guy to the most infamous child predator in modern history, suddenly it's a hoax. Suddenly the documents don't matter. Suddenly we need to talk about something else. Come on. You cannot spend years telling your voters that you are the party of protecting children and then turn around and ignore emails from Jeffrey Epstein saying that your president knew about the abuse of underage girls. You can't have it both ways. You just can't. And the fact that they're even trying to have it both ways tells you everything about how deep the hypocrisy runs. Trump's own defense, his actual public defense, is that if Democrats had a smoking gun, they would have used it already. That's his argument. He's basically saying the evidence can't be real because his opponents didn't use it fast enough. Think about how weak that is. He's not saying the emails are fake. He's not saying Epstein was lying. He's not providing an alternative explanation for why Epstein would write that Trump knew about the girls. His entire defense is, well, if it was real, someone would have gotten me with it by now. That is not the defense of an innocent man. That is the defense of someone who is hoping the clock runs out before anyone connects all the dots. This story is not going away. In fact, it's probably going to get worse for the White House. There are still thousands of pages of Epstein documents that haven't been fully analyzed. Journalists, congressional staffers, and legal researchers are still going through this massive cache of records. Every week, there are new findings. Every week, someone pulls out another email or another financial record or another piece of correspondence that adds to the picture. And the picture is getting uglier every single time. The White House can call it a hoax. They can attack the media. They can say Democrats are playing politics, but they cannot stop people from reading these documents. They cannot unrelease 20,000 pages of evidence. The genie is out of the bottle, and it is not going back in. The Democratic strategy appears to be a slow burn. They're not trying to drop everything at once and create one massive news cycle. They're going to keep releasing findings piece by piece. They're going to keep having members of Congress go on camera and talk about what's in the files. They're going to keep connecting the dots publicly and letting the media amplify it. And the reason that strategy works is because Trump can't fight it. He can't refute specific emails. He can't provide counter evidence. All he can do is say hoax over and over again and hope his base believes him and his base will believe him. That's not really in question. The question is whether everyone else will. The question is whether independents and moderates and swing voters are going to look at an email from Jeffrey Epstein saying Trump knew about the girls and just shrug and move on. I don't think they will. I think for a lot of people, this is going to be the thing that sticks, not because of any single email, but because of the pattern, the relationship that was supposedly casual, but shows up in more than half of the email exchanges. The claim that he cut Epstein off while Epstein was writing privately about having leverage over him. The insistence that he knew nothing while the guy who ran the whole operation was saying the opposite. At some point, the weight of all of that becomes too much to explain away. And that brings me to the thing I keep coming back to every single time we talk about Trump and Epstein, the thing that nobody in the White House will answer directly. If Donald Trump truly has nothing to hide, if his conscience is completely clear, then why doesn't he just release everything, all of it, every document, every email, every record? If there's truly nothing there, then full transparency would be the most powerful thing he could do. It would shut down every critic. It would destroy every conspiracy theory. It would prove once and for all that he was telling the truth. But he won't do it. He keeps fighting over redactions. He keeps trying to control what gets released. He keeps calling it a hoax instead of opening the books. And I'm sorry, but that tells you something. That tells you everything, because innocent people don't act like that. Innocent people don't spend this much energy trying to keep documents sealed. Innocent people say, go ahead, look at everything. I've got nothing to worry about. And the fact that Trump, the guy who loves to say he's the most transparent president in history, won't do that with the Epstein files tells you exactly where this story is heading. It's heading somewhere dark. It's heading somewhere that a lot of powerful people do not want it to go.